Hi everybody. In today's video, we're going to be installing this FuelMoto Jackpot 2-into-1 head pipe on a 2017 Indian Chieftain Limited. So what this Jackpot head pipe is going to do for us is it's going to remove the catalytic converter. That's a highly restricted honeycomb orifice that's in any standard motorcycle or car you see today. And what that does is it just superheats exhaust gases to help them combust, before they eject out of the tailpipe. But by doing this, this is basically a free flow pipe that they've engineered that basically takes that out and allows the exhaust to flow way more freely. And upon inspection, once I received the pipe, I took a look at it, inspected it, and I gotta say, it far exceeded my expectations of what they were going to provide. I mean, everything on here, if you get one, you'll see the welds are just superb. The material, it's all stainless steel, so it's just going to perform super well for this application. So what I've been trying to do, I previously installed an OTB Prototypes Voodoo air cleaner. I'm going to install this to help free up the exhaust, and then I'm going to use a Power Vision CX and tune the bike and get it running to its full potential. So what's going to happen next is I'm going to go ahead and start the preparation to do this modification. So to make the job easier, I'm going to remove the saddlebags and I'm going to take apart and remove the front floorboard and brake lever and move them out of the way. So once I get started on that, I'll see you then. All right, so we have the saddlebags removed and the collector heat shield removed as well. That was just basically two hose clamps. One was right here, and then the other one was back here that goes over the slip-on muffler, which currently is a Reinhardt muffler. And the next step is going to be to remove the mufflers by loosening this clamp here and wiggling those out of the way. But I wanted to show you, right here is where the catalytic converter lies. Some places will just go in, gut that out, weld it back, and put it back. But what FuelMoto did, you can see here, is they basically re-engineered the whole flow with this really nice collector 2-into-1, and then splits out to the other side and to the back. So that's what we're going to be replacing. Part of that is going to be, we're going to have to make one cut into the head pipe right here. Roughly it's going to be right here. We're going to cut that because from the head pipe all the way into the collector currently is one piece. So we're going to reuse this piece, and then we're going to make that cut, and then we're going to put it all together. So the next step is going to be, I'm going to remove both of the slip-ons and then get ready to start removing the exhaust from the heads. Okay, so the right side slip-on exhaust is removed. I did that by removing, there's a little 8mm bolt that you have to loosen that's going to come up right behind this bracket here that's used to hold on the antenna wire. So you loosen that, remove the antenna wire, then you use a 13mm socket, loosen those two bolts, or right there that you see. The top one, the nut is welded to the exhaust pipe, so that stays. The bottom one does have a nut, but it comes right out. I didn't have a problem, just keeping my finger up there and getting it off. And then you move over to the 15mm socket and loosen the clamp that's holding the pipe onto the exhaust header. Once you have all of those loosened, I try to make sure I use plenty of some kind of penetrant like WD-40 or PB Blaster. Let that set for a few minutes, and then I actually start rotating the pipe, clockwise, counterclockwise, clockwise, counterclockwise, and then I wiggle it a little bit up, a little bit down, a little bit left, a little bit right, and you continue that process until you'll get enough to where you'll start getting more and more leverage, and then it'll eventually slide off. It's not very difficult but it is a little time consuming, depending on how, how long yours has been on there. This one's got, close to 2,000 miles, so it wasn't too bad, but it can be frustrating. Just be patient and it'll come right off. So now that that's done, I'm going to go ahead and move on to the other side, remove that heat shield for the crossover pipe and the left side slip-on. And to ease the installation, I removed the floorboard and brake assembly for the rear brake, which surprisingly is actually very easy. If you've ever dealt with Harleys or some other bikes, you know that it could be a huge pain in the rear. But on this installation, or actually removal, it's just 2 bolts that you can kind of see right there. You just loosen those and they provide enough flexure in the hose that you can just lay it down. You don't need to bleed anything, you don't need to really remove anything. It's actually extremely simple. Okay, so at this point I have both mufflers removed. I have the crossover pipe removed, which is fairly simple. There's the pipe connection on the right side that you see there, and then there's a bolt that goes in on the other side that holds it in place. The next step we're going to do is we're going to remove the cylinder fairing, I don't know what they call them, that basically cover up where the exhaust enters into the head. So there's 2 screws in there. I don't know if you'll be able to see them. Inside this little slit there's 2 screws that we're going to remove, and this assembly right here is going to remove, which will expose the bolts. So that's our next step. So here we are now. Everything's unbolted, and the last thing we got to do to remove the exhaust header is on the front and rear cylinder, remove the nuts that are mounted to the studs that hold the flange together between the exhaust pipe and the head. So those are supposed to be approximately 15 foot-pounds, but what I found on mine was that they were actually barely hand tight. So whether or not you even have an Indian or are doing this, I recommend that you remove the exhaust shroud and then just check the tightness on that and verify it's close to 15 foot-pounds. Once that's done on both the front and rear cylinder, then you could just grab the front and the rear and just wiggle it off, and it'll eventually just come loose and you could pull it off to do the modification. So it's not that difficult. It just takes a little bit of patience and some wiggling, and it'll come right off. And then once it's off, you can inspect the gaskets. Supposedly the Indian ones are reusable, but you should inspect them to make sure that there's no serious black soot buildup and that they're not fully compressed. If they have a little bit of sponginess left to them and the color looks good, then you can go ahead, but for the most part, people replace them anytime that they pull the head off, or I'm sorry, pull the exhaust header off. But through Indian, to replace both of the gaskets for the exhaust flange is going to be about $50. They're the most expensive I've ever seen, and I have seen some people online that have been using Harley gaskets. So we'll see once we pull them off. So now we have both of the collectors removed and not installed on the bike. The original collector, you see here, we have to take a measurement and cut the downpipe off of the stock pipe that will be used and installed on the new downpipe. So according to Jackpot's instructions, what you do is you measure 5 inches from this point directly up to the center of the pipe here, and you'll see I marked it and then put a piece of tape around it so that I can follow the line while I'm cutting it. Now we have several options to actually cut the pipe. They recommend using a cutting wheel, which I will be using a little Dremel metal cutting disc like this to cut through the pipe, make it clean, and then I'll use a file. I know this one's kind of rusty, I'm going to clean it up, and we're going to clean up the edge of the pipe so that way when we made it to the new Jackpot head pipe, we're going to have a smooth, easy installation. Now if you look here, this is the spot right here where the new pipe's going to go in. So what you do is when you take your measurement, you want to make sure that the pipe lands somewhere between this opening point right here, which is a pinch point for the clamp, and this point right here. So you really have about a 1/2 of an inch of, area that you can use to do that. So I measured it, and it's going to be right towards the end, which is really nice. It'll make it a nice snug fit. So if you decide using your cutting that you want to use like a saw, maybe a hacksaw or something, what you want to do is make sure that you clamp this down, and you want to try and get your cutting angle as vertical or as perpendicular to the surface you're cutting on as possible. That way you don't have to worry about cutting, angular into the pipe and causing a mistake. So I did the measurements, 5 inches right to there. I'm going to go cut this, and when I come back, we'll see the two pieces separated. So the down tube has been cut away from the original collector, and to check yourself, what you can do, like what I did, is I measured from here all the way up to the cutting point, and it was 5 inches, and then I measured 5 inches from here up to here, and you see where my pipe is going to land inside of that, pretty much a go zone of anywhere in between there will be good. So also, if you look at the cut, it's not great. Like you see, it's a little jagged. I cleaned it up a lot with the file and a little grinding wheel for my Dremel, but you see here like what it'll look like, and you just basically file that down on this end. And then what we're going to do, make sure you slide the clamp that comes with the kit over the pipe, and then we can install the down pipe into the new Jackpot header. And you leave it loose, because what we're going to do is once we install it, we get everything situated and installed loosely, and then we begin tightening down. So the hard part's done. Like I said, it was very simple, no apprehension of it at all. The pipe is designed, and they give you plenty of room for error. So just stick to the directions that FuelMoto provide, and there'll be no problem. All right, so I'm going to get this together, and then we're going to take it out to the bike and start installing it. So here it is installed loosely on the Jackpot header by FuelMoto. Another thing I wanted to point out was you see here at the O2 sensor, make sure before you do the cut you remove the O2 sensor. I did it when I removed the head pipe and the collector from the stock piece, because what happens is when we're cutting in there, we don't want any debris to maybe come in contact with the sensor that's in there, because that's an expensive piece. So just make sure you remove that prior to doing any cutting. All right, so here it is. It's still a little bit loose, so I could rotate it if I wanted to. And then once we get it installed on the bike, basically a little bit past hand tight on the head side, we'll adjust everything, make sure the back end fits well, and then we'll tighten this clamp down. And you see how the clamp, it fits directly over there, covers up those little binding points, and it'll come out real well. So the next time you see it, it'll be on the bike and starting ready to get put back together. So now everything's back installed on the bike, and I want to go through the sequence that you need to do in order to get it all put together in the easiest possible way. So the first thing you're going to do is install the front head pipe very loosely. You just take the two flange nuts that up in here that mount the head pipe to the head and just put them on with a few turns, and then once the jackpot head pipe is mated to the aft one of the benefits is this thing, without this clamp tightened, is easy to rotate, so it makes mating this up here very simple. So once I get those on, I make sure that the aft head pipe here, or I'm sorry, the forward head pipe is mated to the jackpot header fully, and then I clamp it here where the little nut and bolt is that mounts it to the frame of the bike, and then you mount the crossover pipe to the other side. Once that's all done, I then loosely mated the mufflers on each side and got it situated. I dry fitted the heat shields to make sure that everything would line up okay, and once it was lined up okay, I took the heat shields back off, and then starting at the front head pipe, I torqued those bolts down. So those two go to 15 foot-pounds using a 13mm socket, and you do that to the front and to the rear. And then these larger exhaust clamps here, there's one underneath here, right here, and then on the other side for the other muffler. You go ahead and tighten all those down, and those get tightened to, let me see, 31 foot-pounds using a 15mm socket. Once those are torqued, I then move up to this clamp here that's supplied by FuelMoto for the jackpot head pipe. That goes to 10 foot-pounds using an 11mm, and then the same thing under here. This one goes to 31 foot-pounds using a 15mm, and once that's all done and every single nut and bolt is tightened down, I then took the bike out for a ride. So I rode it for probably a good 40 minutes just to make sure there were no leaks and everything before I put the heat shields on permanently, because that would be a pain in the butt, and it's easier to ride the bike and detect any leaks with the heat shields off. So the other thing, obviously, before I took it for a ride, I mounted the floorboard back on with the two floorboard bolts. They're hex bolts that require an 8mm hex bit, and those underneath here get torqued to 35 foot-pounds as well. So now that everything's on, running good, and verified that there are no leaks, I will then go ahead and install the heat shields. So here we have the finished product. Everything's reinstalled and torqued. So an important note is, prior to me putting the heat shields back on, I took the bike for a ride to verify nothing would come loose, etc., no leaks. And then once I pulled the bike back in, I retorqued everything that I had removed or untorqued back to the original specification as called out for in the service manual. So here's everything back together. Had no issues, everything went smooth. The bike sounds fantastic and runs just amazing. I can't speak highly enough about, you know, how much more throatier the sound is. I will take a sound cut, but again, I'm kind of limited with the equipment that I have. I don't think it's really going to do it justice about really how deep the rumble is. Just so much more deep, you know, that I'm extremely happy. So if you guys are looking for a really good way to improve performance with a really well engineered piece of exhaust by some very, very reputable people over at FuelMoto, then I highly recommend this jackpot head pipe. You know, it's hundreds and hundreds less than what it would cost. Super easy installation, and I'm just ecstatic. This is fantastic. So I'm gonna give you a sound bite, and you know, let me know what you think. I hope you like it as much as I do. that was the best soundbite I could get. I tried it with my microphone and it was just too loud. Like the deep bass of it just kept, overpowering the microphone. So trust me, it sounds way more throatier and deeper. And like when you're on the highway and you're rumbling down, it's not loud. It's just very bassy and just a good deep throat. It really opens up those Reinhardts, super nice. So yeah, let me know what you think. I hope you like it. I'm in love with it. Saved me, probably $400. So go talk to the guys at FuelMoto and they'll hook you up with exactly what you need to get your bike better. And stay tuned. I'm going to be doing the next video on the Power Vision CX tune to go along with the air cleaner and the Jackpot head pipe I just installed. All right, ride hard.